Podcasts are pretty common, so what makes the Uncommon podcast uncommon? Well, it's all in our name. I'm your host, Noah Weiss, and we at Uncommon Sports Group understand the unique pressures and temptations that come with a career in the sport industry. We provide uncommon training that helps you successfully navigate common challenges. Hit the follow button on this podcast. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Check out our website and become uncommon. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Uncommon Podcast. I'm your host, Noah Weiss, and today we are continuing in our series, How Did You Get There? I'm excited to welcome Reiff on the show today. Reiff is a friend of mine, an incredible human being, a Hall of Fame athletic trainer, and currently serves at Butler University as Senior Associate Athletic Director for Student Athlete Health, Performance, and Well-Being. Reiff, how are you?
Doing very well, Noah. Great to be with you.
Absolutely. And Reiff has had quite the career journey, serving as the head athletic trainer for Butler University, spending time as the executive director with St. Vincent Sports Performance in Indianapolis, managing athlete care for the Atlanta Olympic Games, managing the medical aspects of 3 Final Fours, working alongside IndyCar drivers, and much, much more. Reiff, share with us why you decided to pursue a career in athletic training and how you landed your first opportunity at Butler University as head athletic trainer in 1981.
Yeah, certainly, Noah. And so going back to high school in northern Indiana, grew up on a farm, was the youngest of 4 children, and so I'm a first-generation college student back then. And so the whole college thing was very new to my family and my parents. Mm-hmm. And I had plans to go to Purdue University, study agriculture, and to do that on an athletic scholarship playing football. Well, in my senior year of high school, I had a significant knee injury and tore my ACL and some other things. And back in the 70s, mid-70s, that was quite an enduring process to have that injury, and really your career was over. And so in those days you could tear up a letter of intent, and so Purdue did that. And I had a physician who mentioned to me about athletic training, and didn't know anything about it, but did a little bit of research and found some information, and then ended up going to the University of Indianapolis for college.
Yeah.
And my brother was there, and that's what led me there. He was there on a track scholarship. And so I walked on the football team and made the team, and then through a variety of different means to get the finances together of being a resident assistant and working for the campus police department and a lot of different jobs to make it all work.
Yeah.
And but I still had this. I really didn't know what I was going to study, so I went to college for all the wrong reasons. I just went because I was an athlete. And then I found my way, and still was thinking about athletic training. And the University of Indianapolis didn't have a program, so a lot of sort of wrong paths as you think about it logistically, but it was all by purpose and design and God's plan, and so I met David Craig, who was the athletic trainer for the Indiana Pacers.
Yeah,
they practiced at the University of Indianapolis, and he took me under his wing. And so a small college campus, University of Indianapolis, created a pathway for me to get the athletic training requirements. And so I wasn't intent on being an athletic trainer. It wasn't a life dream. It wasn't something I aspired to do. We did not have an athletic trainer in high school, so I was never around anybody. and I was going to be a professional farmer, and
Yeah.
and play in the football in the Big Ten, but that was not to be. And so, as I got into athletic training, I really enjoyed it and found all the curriculum elements of biology and anatomy and
Yeah.
physiology just to really be something I enjoyed. Not that I was really good at it, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Ralph, I appreciate you sharing that. I do think it's really cool that even heading into college, you weren't sure if that was the path you'd want to take or not. And I think for a lot of young professionals, even myself included in that, when I got into college, I had no idea where I wanted to go, right? And as you kind of progress through your years, you kind of figure it out. So I think that is something for our students to really consider is you do have time. There is a lot of opportunity to try things you may not have ever tried before and really take that home and see if you like it. And if you do, kind of as you did with your experience in athletic training with David Craig, that really allows you to advance and go forth with that career path. So I love that, Ralph. And you eventually transitioned out of your role at Butler and took on the executive director role with St. Vincent Sports Performance in Indianapolis, an awesome institution. And share with us how that opportunity came about and what that experience was like.
Yeah, so I was spent 18 years at Butler University. My first job out of graduate school, Miami of Ohio, and first full-time job. And was very fortunate. I was the only athletic trainer at Butler. So replaced the person who retired, who moved down the hallway to the equipment room at Butler, inside Hinkle Fieldhouse. And so in the summer of 1981, I started there and stayed for 18 years. And during that period of time, I had a sidebar goal professionally of being involved in the Olympics.
Wow.
And so that ties into what I did at St. Vincent. So bear with me. So I applied to that process right out of graduate school, and I got plugged in through that process, had opportunities, and you work your way through like any organization, and you do a good job, they ask you back. You don't do a good job, they don't ask you back. And
Yep.
and so I was fortunate. I kept getting asked back, and so through that experience with the Olympic model of seeing all of the various sort of holistic, collaborative areas of healthcare and science and coaching coming together, really influenced me, really impacted me, and in my own philosophy as an athletic trainer. And that philosophy is that I'm very open, I'm very collaborative, I'm very sharing with if somebody else knows something that I need to know, I'm going to bring them in, or I'm going to go learn from them. So park that for a moment, and then I got to a really tough period in life here at Butler. I was doing great, and I was loving every minute of my work, and but it was out of balance with my wife Brenda and our 3 children, and it just got to the point where it was a real struggle for me emotionally to be at work as much as I was, and not be a presence in my family. And now we had fun and all those things, but boy, it just tore at me when I'd have conversations with my wife during the day, or on a weekend I'd be at a practice or something, and she'd be trying to get the kids in the car, and it was a struggle. And she was a school teacher, and so she had her own load, and then I was just a door opened up, and I was recruited by a local hospital to help them sort of reinvent their sports medicine program. And at first I had no interest, but over the course of a year, I I shifted my thought process, and they kept sort of waiting on me.
Yeah.
And so I resigned from Butler, took the position at St. Vincent Hospital to be a director of their sports medicine program. And I said, well, I've got an idea. If I do this, I've got this idea about this new thing called sports performance. And it was really new in 1999. And it was an unusual title. It was a framework of bringing together, coaches, athletic trainers, strength coaches, dietitians, sports psychologists, and just having all these touch points so that an athlete could go to one place and get all those services.
Totally.
And so they allowed me to do that. And we started from scratch, and we ended up at one point having 104 employees within St. Vincent Sports Performance, and traveling all over the world to take care of athletes all over the world coming to Indianapolis for healthcare and training. And so I made that leap. It went awesome. To be in a faith-based organization like St. Vincent was really comfortable for me. And so that's where I spent the next 20 years.
Wow. Ralph, I appreciate you sharing that. That's an amazing a leap of faith to go from a place like Butler where you're comfortable to a new role at St. Vincent where you were the executive director and had a lot of responsibility, as you said. And it's even more inspiring to hear that you were able to implement the sports performance aspect of it. If I could ask a follow-up question there, what gave you the confidence to really go forth with something so new? I think for a lot of people in the sports industry, it can be a challenge to be confident, and sometimes you want to play it safe because it is a tough industry and it's competitive in terms of keeping your role and being in the place that you are. So what gave you the confidence to go forward with implementing something so new like sports performance?
Noah, how do I answer that question? I don't know that I've never thought about it. I shouldn't say never, but recently, like, what gave me the confidence? I think I always had, and just like I do here at Butler, I have this gift of being able to see what I want, you know, and see what, I've got this mind's eye of saying, this is what I think it'll look like. This is what it could look like. And to be committed to that, and learn to back up that commitment with evidence, whether it's testimonials, whether it's a market research, whether it's research of evidence about a certain technique or a product, or and a lot of what we did in sports performance early on, we were providing a solution for athletes who didn't have a home. Take an IndyCar driver. They're nomadic. They go all over the world. They didn't really have a home where someone would really dig in for them and find everything, and not have an ego to where they wanted to be bigger than the driver. Right?
Yeah.
And so that was always the vision, that I wanted to give athletes at all levels a safe place, an ethical place where they could get the best of services and feel and know that we were for them. And that was always the vision, and that's who I am. So it was easy, and so I don't know that it was a bold confidence. I think it was an inner knowledge that this is the right thing to do.
Totally.
right? But with that, one of my favorite words in life is courage. And I would say I have more courage than confidence.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
I have much more
Absolutely.
courage, and courage comes from my faith, and
Yeah.
from and life's experiences.
Totally.
There's a value of being 63 years old, and
Yeah.
being able to reflect and say, "Hey, Ralph, why are you anxious or nervous about this? You've done this for 40 years professionally."
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, why am I, right?
Yeah.
Have
Right.
some courage about this. You know, reflect on your faith about this. And
Yeah.
and so I think I have had more courage than confidence.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
courage is just, it's just the other side of fear.
Yeah.
And I've tried to never allow fear to stop me from doing something that I know
Right.
is right.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so there you
Yeah.
go.
I appreciate that, Ralph. And I really want to highlight two things you said because I really loved how you just communicated that. And the first thing is that it's about the kids, right? And that's why at St. Vincent, when you were able to implement the sports performance side of things, it was about the kids. And that for you was the motivation. I think for our listeners, young professionals, future leaders in the sport industry, should be the motivation. And I just did a podcast a few weeks ago with the former athletic director at the University of Minnesota, and he said something very similar to the effect of it's about the kids. And when you do a job in the sports industry, it's about the kids, it's about the athletes. And I think for you, that's a tremendous motivation. And then the second thing, really using your faith as a foundation of your courage and of your confidence. So I think that's something for our students as well to really take home is your faith can be that building block for you. And it can really be something you lean on when things are tough, because they are in the sports industry, and when decisions are tough, that it really can be something to give you the strength to allow the one who's in control to be in control and to take yourself away from that place of control. So well said, Ralph. I appreciate the answer there
Yeah.
for sure. And then, Ralph, you had the opportunity to manage the health of Olympic athletes in the 1996 Olympic Games in Atlanta, Georgia. So share with us how that opportunity came about for you and how that experience impacted your career journey.
Yeah, so I was here at Butler, and a couple of years, well, it was in '94. I received a conversation phone call from a good friend of mine who had been at Ball State University. His name was Mike Ferrara, and Mike's an athletic trainer, and he had done a lot of work in his career with Paralympic athletes, and had really become a driving force, a thought leader in that realm of Paralympic healthcare. And he was hired by the Atlanta Committee for the Olympic Games to lead their Paralympic healthcare model. And he had a colleague at the Olympic Games who was in the same role, who resigned from the role about 18 months before the games. And so
Wow.
Mike made a recommendation to the group to reach out to me, and they did. And that's a bittersweet. Being involved in an event situation like that is very bittersweet because there's two sides of that continuum, and so and what I mean by that is you're either all in or you're really not doing the job.
Right.
The Olympics is an all in, all committed, and so my family stayed here in Indianapolis. I moved to Atlanta. I was very fortunate. I was able to work out a deal with Butler that
Wow.
I was given unpaid leave, but at least I was guaranteed an opportunity to come back. All right.
Yeah.
And and I did come back to Butler, and stayed for a couple years, 3 years, until the St. Vincent thing came about.
Yeah.
And so I moved to Atlanta. I had in my deal that I could sort of come home every weekend or before we started having events. And so we made it work. It was hard. I journaled during all that time, which I'm really glad I did. It's always interesting to go back and look at my journal during those 18 months. And there are some extraordinary times. And, 3 sleepless days during the sort of the early peak of the games where just didn't have the means to stop. There's
Right.
just so much going on. But the lessons that I learned with that and the people I met, but really it was the lessons of how, again, my conviction of collaboration. It was really at the peak during those games because you're dealing with EMTs, paramedics, physician assistants, RNs, dietitians, physicians
Yeah.
of all specialties,
Wow.
vendors of equipment, and making decisions about what equipment we're going to use, and working within the budget, and dealing across lines of logistics and security and food and beverage and uniforms and credentialing and
Yeah.
security.
Right.
Big deal with security, and just being in those meetings with people from all over the world who work events all over the world. I remember sitting in meetings getting ready for our road cycling events, and the
Yeah.
group had just come from the Tour de France. And so here's this whole group of people who are
Yeah.
managing the road cycling event for the Olympic road racing in Atlanta, and they had just finished the Tour de France. And so they're exhausted, but no one knows it better than they do, that
Right.
group of people. And to have them come in and to sit and watch that and listen to them and integrate with their knowledge, those are just things that I've just fascinated by. And
Yeah.
and also the Olympic athletes. There's 10,500 athletes at the Olympic Games, and as I always tell people when I'm talking about the Olympics, okay, name 20 athletes from the most recent Olympics.
Yeah. It's hard to do.
It's hard to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's 10,500 Olympians across the world.
Wow.
And for them, there's no greater moment.
Right.
And that's what I've really learned is that it's while the crowds, television, all of that is fun and exciting, the best of the best athletes are those who excel without that.
Right.
And just their inner drive and their conviction. And sometimes it could be misguided, and addictions and various things occur because you're so into that, and there's a real
Right.
balance issue with life. But that's what I always take away from being around elite athletes within the Olympic environment is just how focused they get towards their goal.
Yeah.
And a lot of them do it with very few external resources.
Yeah.
And it's just it just blows me away. And so then when I sit down to do my job every day, I reflect on that a lot, and that has really shaped me over the last 30 years. Has been to,
Yeah.
hey, I don't need a crowd. I don't need somebody patting me on the back. Now, do I like those things? Sure, I do.
Of course. Yeah.
But I can't rely upon that to do my best work. I've got to find that within me,
Yeah.
and that's what I've learned from being around that level of athlete.
Yeah, Ralph. Well, first of all, it is profound hearing that from you, just in terms of it's not about the crowd. It's not about the pat on the back. And I think for a lot of young professionals, that is kind of the motivation is I want to work in the NFL, the highest level of football. And if I can't get there, then I don't want to do it. When it's the reality is you could have a different path that doesn't go quite to the NFL, but you're still really involved in what you love to do, which is athletics, whether it be intercollegiate, high school, professional. That's a tremendous point for a young professional to hear, and I really appreciate you sharing that. And in terms of, just how amazing it was for you to work in the Olympics, you also were able to work in 3 Final Fours, the 2002 FIBA World Basketball Championships, the 2006 USA Track and Field Outdoor Championships, and this year, you're actually the medical chair for the College Football Playoff in Indianapolis. For our students listening, I'm sure they're amazed at the fact that you got to even work in the Olympics, but including these other amazing events that you were a part of, how did you get involved in those events, and what would you say to our students who are listening for their careers, how they can get involved in similar events as they progress throughout their career journey?
Yeah, I think one of the fortunate things is Indianapolis is home base for me. And, Indianapolis, back in the early 80s, the leaders of this city made a commitment to the sports industry. And they made a commitment to build an infrastructure of sports facilities, to make it a part of the economy of the region, to attract events here. And so, I always give credit to geography for my career by being in Indianapolis and being close to those events and close to the people who were leading those events. It was it was geographically easy to sort of knock on the door and say, "Hey, I'll help with this. I'll pitch in." Well, and plus, then my path along the the Olympic athletic training involvement,
Right.
and developing a resume and an awareness of people that I was in that world. I did a lot with USA Basketball, USA Track and Field, USA Cross Country, which is part of track and field, gymnastics and swimming. And so you meet people who are running those events. You develop a network. And so it's really, for all of it, I don't think a lot has changed about the entry-level point of there are within events across the country. There are cities that are always hosting events, whether it's Seattle or it's Houston or it's Austin or it's Los Angeles, whatever. And they're always looking for people to support the structure, the infrastructure of hosting that event. And so there are pathways of getting in there, whether it's helping with ticketing, it's helping with marketing, it's helping with logistics, it's helping with medical, it's helping with transportation. And here with the college football playoffs, for example, I think we've got some 24 people who are handpicked as team host.
Wow.
All right. So what do you need to be a team host? Well, this round you need a vaccination card.
Right.
But you need a network, and you need to know that organization is looking for those people. And there's no academic or job pathway to being a team host at the college football playoff championship game.
Right.
That's grit. It's people skills. It's professionalism. It's hospitality. It's generosity of spirit. It's those kinds of things that put you in a position to do that. And then, boy, you do one, you'll either catch the fever, and you'll want to do the next one, or you'll say, this isn't really what I thought it was. But if it is what you thought it was, man, you're in, because the pool is not that deep. I mean, and so it's about presenting yourself and looking and finding those spots to be involved.
Yeah. And Ralph, I do appreciate you sharing that, especially the point about professionalism, network, people skills. I mean, those things are vital for a successful career in the sport industry, but especially in terms of getting yourself involved in those incredible events that you've been a part of and that our students really want to be a part of as well. So I do appreciate you sharing that point. I think that's very vital in terms of the finding those opportunities and taking advantage. And Ralph, you came back to Butler in 2019 to accept the role that you're presently in as Senior Associate Athletic Director for Student Athlete Health, Performance, and Well-Being. What played into your decision to come back to Butler, and how did your previous experiences prepare you for that role?
Well, I was at St. Vincent Sports Performance for 20 years, and about 17 years into that, I started getting this itch to get sort of refocused with a singular sports organization. At St. Vincent, I worked across multiple platforms, multiple organizations, and an unbelievable experience. From running a recovery center for athletes at the Games of Rio, where we worked with a company called Procter and Gamble, and doing those kinds of things, to race car drivers and full spectrum. But I was sort of a step away from truly being impactful to the athlete, in my opinion. And I started getting that itch to wanting to say, okay, hey, I've been doing this for a long time. I want to take what I've learned about high performance planning and about all the experiences and bring it to a singular organization. So I started looking across, and my wife and I, we made a commitment. She made a commitment that, let's be open geographically to be everywhere. So I networked and talked with, Bernard Muir, athletic director at Stanford, to Brad Stevens with the Celtics, to Barry Collier here at Butler as athletic director, to, the folks with the Indiana Pacers and across the NFL that I had some experience. But I had an idea what I wanted to do. And it was, I was in a position, I learned I wasn't articulating it very well, what I really wanted to do. And in a way that people who hadn't been around like a St. Vincent Sports Performance model could really understand. And so in talking with a general manager and a team president with MLS, they were like, we need this, but we've got that and that and that. Well, I want to manage all of that. And it's like, So I had a couple conversations with Barry Collier. Now, I had worked with Barry, the athletic director here at Butler, when he was the head basketball coach at Butler. We had a great relationship, have a great relationship. And so through another friend, Thad Mata, Thad was very encouraging of me to go back and talk to Barry again. I had said something to Barry about, at the start of my journey, hey, networking, Val Ackerman with the Big East, and so all these people, help me figure out. And so Thad encouraged me, says, hey, you need to go back and talk to Barry. I said, really? So just a little bit about Thad. I didn't do it. And like 2 weeks later, I saw Thad again, and he said, and Thad never does this. Thad does not stick on a topic. He hits and goes, hits and goes, hits and goes. When he hit me a second time and said, have you talked to Barry Collier? I was like, whoa, this is not the Thad Mata I know. For him to still be thinking about that 2 weeks later. So I told my wife, I said, Brenda, and she knows, we know the Matas very well. Brenda's like, there's a sign. I said, all right, I'll call Barry. I called Barry and I said, hey, would you want to have a conversation about how I might come back to Butler? And he said, 100% yes.
Wow. Wow.
So here's a dream come true.
Right.
I got to write my job description.
Wow.
Barry says, Ralph, I don't know what it is that you do. I have an idea. We have an opening for a head athletic trainer.
Yeah.
I said, well, I want to be the head athletic trainer. I want to help Butler athletics perform at a higher level.
Yeah.
I want the student athlete experience to be extraordinary in the way that we can manage it from a support structure standpoint.
Yeah.
And so I worked with another colleague on his staff to help them write the job description
Wow.
that I applied for.
Yeah.
And so that's how I ended up here. And I never dreamed I'd be back at Butler. Never.
Wow.
I thought,
Yeah.
this isn't going to work at Butler. And did I take a pay cut? Sure I did. I took a pay cut from my job at St. Vincent to work at Butler University.
Yeah.
But my wife and I are at a point in life where we could make that work.
Right.
But I just want people to know that this wasn't like I made this amount of money and now I'm going to make this amount of money. No, I went quite the other way.
Yeah.
And now I'm well compensated,
Yeah.
but I took a pay cut and to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so that's how I got to Butler a second time.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ralph, I do appreciate you sharing the point of taking the pay cut. And that can be another thing that's really scary for any professional, especially a young professional. It can be tough in the early years of a sport industry journey because you're taking jobs that are not as well compensated, and it can be hard to make a move that you're concerned about financially. And I think for our students listening, always putting your goals and your aspirations to impact the athlete before the finances, in most cases, is a good decision. I think for you, that's an awesome testimony, and I appreciate you sharing that. And from experience working with you at Butler, I will say it was incredible to see how you've changed the athletic department and changed the sports performance aspect of the university. I know that we as managers appreciated it, and I know the athletes definitely appreciated it. So it was evident in your work, and we appreciate that, Ralph.
Well, thank you. It means a lot to hear that. And
absolutely.
A word about managers. I love you guys. I tell you, and there's, I grew up and I think it truly goes back to my parents. My dad and mom were both janitors of a high school. All right.
Yeah.
Small farmers. My dad drove school bus, but they were in the school every day as sweeping the floors, mopping the floors, locking the doors, unlocking the doors, washing the windows, emptying the trash cans, and our great friend Chris Purley, who runs the caretaker of Hinkle Field House, and our managers. I just have such great respect and gratitude for that grind. So it's easy for me to like the managers.
I appreciate that, Ralph. I definitely appreciate that. And lastly, Ralph, what advice would you give a young professional who is desiring to have a career in athletic training or sports performance?
There's a lot changing academically in that realm. Undergraduate athletic training programs are going away. It's all master's degree level now. So there's really, there's really an opportunity to dual credential, to have an undergraduate degree while you're advancing and wanting to go get your athletic training. You can maybe in kinesiology, human movement. There's a lot of different names for those curriculums, but you can get your background, let's say in physiology, strength and conditioning, personal training, dietetics, and then get your master's degree in athletic training and have this dual path, this dual credential. And then if you want to really aspire, you go get your doctorate in physical therapy, and you start stacking all of these things. I think that there's My advice would be that be present in your undergraduate role as a student.
Yeah.
When what do I mean by that? I've got a baseball player here right now at Butler who's interested in going to be a doctor.
Wow.
And he knocked on my door one day and said, and we didn't really know each other. I didn't work with baseball that much. And John came forward and said, "Hey, Ralph, can I talk to you about what my career plans are?" I said, "Sure, sit down." And so he said, "I was wondering if you could just help me network and spend some time with some physicians in different specialties here in Indianapolis so I can get an understanding."
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, and so if you take 5,000 students at Butler University,
Yeah.
it's going to be less than 1% who will do something like that.
Yeah.
But yet it's available to all 5,000 to network and to ask questions and to seek support. And so that's the advice I would get. Be present in your undergraduate journey and connect and ask for advice of how to connect and how to go about exploring and really understanding. I've had a couple of students do that here this fall, and man, I just smile when that happens. It's just great.
Yeah, absolutely, Ralph. I really appreciate you sharing that. And it is, as you said, there's 5,000 students that could be the ones that come in and take that opportunity, but it was just the one. So I think for our students listening, being that student or that young professional that does take advantage of learning from people that have been through it, that have been on that journey, and that can really help you in terms of getting you to the places you want to go. So, Ralph, I really appreciate that. That is some tremendous advice. Ralph, it was my pleasure to have you on the podcast today, and as always, it is good to see you, my friend.
Yes, sir. I'm proud of you, young man. Proud of you.
Thank you, Ralph. Thank you so much. If you want to get involved with Uncommon Sports Group and the mission that we are on to help you navigate the sport industry as followers of Christ, apply for our training experience on our website at uncommonsg.org. That's uncommonsg.org. Be sure to catch this new series of the Uncommon podcast every Thursday at midnight Eastern Time, as well as full video episodes on our YouTube channel. Until next time, we pray that you will strive to be uncommon by glorifying the name of God in whatever you may do. See you next week.